What's up, you guys? My name's Tyler Rugge, and for today's video, we are going to be upgrading my hedgehog enclosure and also making it bioactive. And yes, you heard me right. You read the title right. I'm making a bioactive hedgehog enclosure. Now, this is something that I have not seen very many people online do at all. I came across a couple people online who did it, and I read a blog about it that I followed to make this enclosure. I'll link the blog down in the description below if you guys want to check it out. It's an amazing resource, and it gives you a lot of information about hedgehogs and how to properly set up a bioactive enclosure for them, and this is what I followed. And I've always, with a lot of my reptiles and things, really tried to mimic their natural environment when setting up their habitat. You always want to make it close to what they would live in the wild, obviously, for obvious reasons. Like, you just want to make the enclosure close to what it would be like in the wild. You don't want them to feel like they're out of place in their enclosure. You want it to feel natural for them. And I've always kind of wondered in the back of my mind, why do we keep hedgehogs in, these cages with paper bedding and fleece hides and stuff like that, even fleece liners, because that's so unnatural. And obviously it's very clean, probably comfortable for the hedgehog, but I've always wondered, why don't we try to mimic their natural environment when setting up their enclosure? And that's when I came across bioactive hedgehog enclosures, and it crossed my mind, and I was like, holy crap, that looks so cool. I really want to give it a shot. And hedgehogs are an animal that haven't been kept in captivity very long relative to a lot of other animals that we've been keeping in captivity forever. So we don't know a whole lot about hedgehog care. We have basic things down, but overall there's a lot of things that people need to try. And bioactive enclosures is something that I wanted to give a try to see how my hedgehog reacts in there, how much more he loves it, and if it brings out any natural behaviors in the hedgehog that I don't normally see in his old enclosure. And on top of making his enclosure bioactive, I am upgrading the size of the enclosure. His previous enclosure, not sure the exact dimensions of it, but it was around 4.5 square feet. And this new enclosure is the Amazon Basics Extra Large Small Animal Habitat, and it is 4 feet by 2 feet, which makes it 8 square feet, which is plenty of space for a hedgehog, and I think he'll enjoy it a lot more. Before we get into it, I want to talk about where hedgehogs actually come from. Hedgehogs come from Central and Eastern Africa, which is a very dry, arid, kind of like savanna land climate. It's dry. They prefer like open grasslands, lots of clutter on the ground. They tend to avoid forests and swamplands. So this is going to be a more dry, desert-y bioactive setup as opposed to a tropical bioactive setup, which with things like crested geckos, for example, would have more of a tropical setup. But if you're going to do a hedgehog or something like a bearded dragon in a bioactive setup, it's going to be a dry, desert, arid setup. So with these setups, you usually don't need a drainage layer. Drainage layers usually come into place with tropical setups where there's a lot of misting involved and a lot of foliage. But with these drier setups, you're not going to be misting it very much at all. You're not going to be watering it very much at all. And there aren't going to be a whole lot of plants. And if you do put in plants in there, you do need to make sure that they are safe for hedgehogs, which the blog that I linked down below lists some hedgehog-safe plants. And they also need to not really be tropical plants. Things like succulents or plants that are indoor plants that don't need to be watered very often tend to do well in these sort of bioactive setups. But again, you need to make sure whatever plants you choose to use are hedgehog safe in case your hedgehog decides to nibble on it. Let's just get straight into setting up the hedgehog enclosure. Hope you guys enjoy it, and let's just get straight to it. So this is the cage. Again, it's the small animal cage by Amazon Basics, and it's the jumbo size, which again is 4 by 2. For this enclosure, on the very bottom, I'm going to be first putting in a mixture of coconut fiber and sphagnum moss that's really moist. And I'm also going to mix in organic potting soil. This is going to just be the bottom layer. You want the bottom to be moist because that's kind of where the cleanup crew is going to live and thrive. And also, obviously, the plants I'm gonna put in here need to get some moisture from the bottom. So, first we're gonna add the coconut fiber and the sphagnum moss, and then I'm going to add organic soil, and I'm gonna mix it together. Let's do it. On top of this layer, I'm just going to be adding some leaf litter by Pangea. This will really help the cleanup crew start up and have something to eat on before I put my hedgehog in there. All right, so now that we've added all of the plants, I'm going to add the cleanup crew. And for the cleanup crew, you can add a lot of things. I'm going to be adding a variety. First of all, I'm going to be adding some springtails. These will help eat a lot of the waste and also manage any mold or mildew or anything like that that could possibly grow in here, which probably won't happen. Next, we have these dwarf white isopods. Once again, these are just these little tiny bugs that help, you know, eat the waste. So that's what these do. Just gonna be throwing some of those in there. And then I'm going to be adding some mealworms. These will eat a lot of the waste, and not only that, but my hedgehog can feed off of the mealworms. And what's really good about this is my hedgehog's going to dig and look for the mealworms just like it would in the wild, because they are insectivores. They eat insects in the wild. So last but not least, I'm going to be adding some little dubia roaches, and these are gonna burrow down into the ground, and my hedgehog can also look for these and try to eat them, and also these will help manage waste as well. So yeah. So after I kind of had the basic setup done and I put in the cleanup crew, I just let the enclosure sit for about a week. Now, when doing bioactive setups, it's important to let the bioactive cleanup crew and everything establish for a while before you actually introduce your animal into the enclosure. Because if I were to put my hedgehog in there right away, all my hedgehog would do is run around and eat all the bugs that I put in there, and there wouldn't be much of a cleanup crew left. So you want to leave it for about a week, and this will let the cleanup crew kind of burrow down into the ground. They might lay some eggs, reproduce a little bit, and some of the mealworms will start to metamorphosize into beetles. The cleanup crew will just, you know, establish itself, and also the plants' roots will grow into the ground, and it will make the plants a lot more sturdy and harder for your hedgehog to dig the plants up. Keep in mind that with these setups, you will need to replenish the mealworms and the dubia roaches and the cleanup crew in general. You need to replenish it every once in a while because your hedgehog is going to go around and eat it. Hedgehogs are insectivores in the wild. They dig in the ground and they look for food. So they're going to do that in your bioactive setup, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I think it's good for them to exhibit natural behaviors like that. So as time goes on, I will be replenishing mealworms and dubia roaches and isopods and everything into the enclosure. And also throughout the week, I added some stuff to the enclosure that I didn't necessarily film. Like I added a little bit more soil on top, and I also added a little bit of cypress mulch and a little bit of reptibark, and I just sprinkled it on top to kind of make it more natural looking. And underneath the log hides, I put some hay in there, which a lot of people with bioactive setups do so that hedgehogs can kind of burrow in the hay and kind of like nest in it and make themselves comfortable in their hide. I didn't want it to look like perfectly clean, like, all right, a perfect layer of sand on top and we are good. Because I wanted it to look like it was like outside, there's random stuff everywhere. It's like you know, it's like you're looking at the ground outside. But this is what the hedgehog cage looked like after I was all done with it. And then I introduced Momo to it, and we'll see what she does and how she likes it.
Up in paradise, I suppose. If you will tell me I'm the only one that you love, life could be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again. Shaboom, and home will meet again. Oh, life could be a dream. If I could take you up in paradise, I suppose. If you will tell me I'm the only one that you love, life could be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again. Shaboom, and home will meet again. Oh,
Also, I wanted to add in there really quick that I do have a ceramic heat emitter on my hedgehog enclosure. Hedgehogs need a warmer climate so that they don't go into hibernation, because trying to go into hibernation can be very dangerous for captive bred hedgehogs that don't live in the wild. So yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you do end up making a bioactive setup for your hedgehog, make sure to tweet me a picture, because I want to see your guys' setups, because I'm sure I'll get good ideas from you guys, and I'll probably want to copy you. So please send me pics. My Twitter and all my other social media links are down below, so if you guys want to follow me on those, that would be cool. Also follow my vlog channel, that will be linked down below as well. And I'll see you guys in my next video.